Hey everybody, it's Bing Bong, filling you in on what my pal Riley's been up to since you saw her last. She's now an aerospace engineering major at Georgia Tech, training to finally take a trip with me to the moon. School has been a little rough on her lately, though. Her doctors say that she has something called insomnia. What's that?
That's when you have trouble falling asleep, Bing Bong. It can be caused by many things, such as stress from a changing environment or an irregular sleep schedule, to name a few. This disrupts the circadian rhythm of the body, which impacts the levels of the hormone melatonin. Melatonin is produced in the pineal gland, located near the hypothalamus in the brain. It is derived from the amino acid tryptophan. As the day grows darker, more melatonin is produced, prepping the body for sleep. Because of the role that melatonin plays in regulating circadian rhythms, it interacts with a variety of other hormones and neurotransmitters, where its effects are amplified through the signal transductions. Changing these levels can impact everyone we know at headquarters.
I get all of my information about Riley's safety from hormones like epinephrine in the short term and cortisol in the long term.
Cortisol, like melatonin, is another hormone used to regulate circadian rhythms.
With everything that Riley has to do to keep up with her schoolwork, I've been noticing a spike in her cortisol levels. In response to stress, cortisol increases blood glucose levels in order to provide cells, especially brain cells, with sustained energy until the stress is past.
Okay, so what does cortisol have to do with melatonin?
The relationship between cortisol and melatonin has to do with negative feedback, as they accomplish different things in the body. This leads to cortisol peaking during the day but reaching its lowest point after 3 to 5 hours of sleep, whereas melatonin peaks during these times of low cortisol and reaches its lowest levels during the day.
In one study, researchers dissected the pineal gland of a group of rats and found proof of this negative feedback loop, that it impacts the functioning of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis with the production of cortisol in the adrenal cortex, preventing the production of melatonin. In another study also done on rats, an injection of melatonin decreased the ability of the rats to produce cortisol and respond to stress, with stress being induced by leaving them immobilized on their backs.
When the pineal gland is producing less melatonin because of insomnia, the adrenal cortex will produce an excess of cortisol because there's nothing to inhibit it. And while I might like keeping Riley safe and cautious, too much of anything can be a bad thing. An overproduction of cortisol would throw off the equilibrium within our body and lead to an increased formation of the physiological stress response until the adrenal glands eventually give out. This would cause her body to overreact to simple everyday stressors and lead to anxiety, a mental disorder where feelings of worry interfere with your everyday life. Symptoms of anxiety include fidgeting, muscle tension, and a heightened heart rate. With chronic anxiety, other anxiety disorders, such as OCD and agoraphobia, could develop, along with even more serious health complications.
So changing melatonin levels can increase the activity of the brain and give someone anxiety. But can they lower it?
Well, let's visit Joy next to see how melatonin affects the other end of the mental health spectrum. Sadness, where's Joy?
Joy's away from headquarters right now, but maybe I can help you guys.
I guess you can. We were just hoping to talk about melatonin and how it relates to serotonin, the happy chemical. But if that's not quite your area of expertise...
Oh no, I know all about serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter associated with mood and appetite regulation. It is produced from the same pathway as melatonin, and melatonin is actually formed from serotonin.
Why would sadness know so much about the happy chemical?
Joy and I are like two ends of the same spectrum. Sometimes I just have more of an influence on a person than Joy does. This is known as depression. We don't know exactly what causes depression, but one popular theory is that it's caused by lower serotonin levels. In people with depression, serotonin levels are lower than in healthy individuals, so it has less of an effect on the brain. Soon, the activity of all regions of the brain decreases. People with depression can experience fatigue and loss of energy, feel indecisive, have trouble concentrating, and lose interest in the activities that they used to enjoy. Crying helps me personally slow down and obsess over the weight of life's problems.
So if melatonin comes from serotonin, will lower serotonin levels result in lower melatonin levels?
That's right. However, scientists also conducted a study with rats that had their pineal gland removed in order to see what effect melatonin had on serotonin. There were two groups of rats that received melatonin injections, one where the pineal gland was left intact and one where the gland was removed. In the group where the gland was removed, serotonin levels were shown to increase after the melatonin injections, indicating that there is a positive feedback loop between melatonin and serotonin concentrations.
So when there isn't enough melatonin, there won't be enough serotonin. And when there isn't enough serotonin, Riley becomes depressed.
So how can we get my Riley better?
Well, even with all this being said, the relationship between insomnia and mental illness is not necessarily one way. Their relationship is often a positive feedback loop, with the development of one causing the development or worsening of the symptoms of the other. Not getting enough rest can elevate stress levels, which increases cortisol levels that inhibit those of melatonin. And if low melatonin levels result in low serotonin levels, depression can occur.
So why is this important?
Approximately 48% of Americans report occasional insomnia, and within our highly competitive education system and workplaces, the synergistic effects of lack of sleep, stress, and general dissatisfaction with life may be a large contributor to the fact that about 1/5 of all Americans are reported with a mental disorder of some kind, including anxiety disorders and depression.
Ah, now I see. So first, insomnia causes a drop in the levels of melatonin. This disruption then leads to altering proper cortisol and serotonin cycles within the body. With an overproduction of cortisol, Riley could develop anxiety, and with decreased serotonin, Riley could become depressed.
Luckily, melatonin supplements are a common treatment for sleep disorders once the specific cause of the disorder is identified. If addressed soon enough, insomnia doesn't have to lead to anything worse than a bit of trouble falling asleep.